The Powers Project.
Alex, it seems like I just saw you. How are you doing?
I think we did. And I had so much fun with you the first time, excited to go even deeper.
Exactly. I had a great time with you. And again, folks, if you haven't, if this is the first episode that you see with me with Alex, there's one before this. You're going to want to check it out because he drops a lot of truth and a lot of wisdom in that episode. So make sure you check that out. We're going to kind of change paths here. We're going to talk about some topics that we didn't talk about yesterday. But before we do that, before we transition over there, I did want to address something that you said a few times yesterday, which was talking about poking the universe. So
Mm.
because I thought about it when you were saying it, and then of course we started talking about a bunch of other stuff, and you get sidetracked and forget. And um, so I wanted to tell you my experience whenever I set out to achieve something. Whenever I put something out into the universe where I deliberately say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to get in the best shape of my life, whatever it may be. And it's almost like I put it out to the universe and the universe says, oh, really? You think so, huh? Well, let's just see how committed you are to that. And so it sets out to put obstacles in my way to see if I'm willing to do what it takes to
Mm.
reach those goals or if I'm just talking out my ass. And so, and I found that to be the case almost all the time. And so I don't know if it's the universe or if it's my subconscious mind going, "Oh, we're gonna have to sabotage your ass," because it could be that too. And I'll give an easy example that almost everybody has experienced. Whenever people go out and go, you know what, I need to start saving money, and so
Mm.
they make a deliberate action to start putting money away. Whether it's they take certain percentage out of their check each week and they put it in the savings account or whatever, and then they'll accumulate a little bit of money. Like they might go, oh, I got $600 in my account, it's only been 3 months, look at what I'm doing and how much money I'm saving and how that's going to benefit me in the future. And then lo and behold, out of the blue, their car breaks down and
Mm.
they have to take it to the
Mm.
shop. And so they take it to the shop and the mechanic looks at it and tells them what's wrong with it, and guess how much it costs?
600.
$600. And it's And I know there are people out there going, yes, that happened to me. I mean, I guarantee that's happened to almost everybody. And whenever that's what I'm saying, whenever you make a concerted effort to do something like that, it's almost as if the universe is saying, are you truly committed to this? Because here's the truth. And this is what I discovered is that you have that $600 in savings, your car needs to be fixed. And so people go, well, what do I do if I don't use that $600? And I go, whatever you would do if you didn't have that $600. Imagine you didn't have it, because you have to, because that's how you have to look at it. That is not your money. That is not your money to spend. So if you didn't have $600, what would you do? Would you Uber? Would you borrow money? Would that's what you do, but you don't touch that money for anything. But anyway, the whole purpose of me telling you this long story is because I want to get your take on it. If that's what you meant by poking the universe, or if it was something different. And what do you think about my little theory there?
Mm. Well, I think money has a very interesting role in our society, and I think depending on where the individual lives might change their experience in this area. But we all once we there's a shift from where you want something to where I'm going to create this. And that's like a mental shift where no matter what happens, this is going to be my new reality. And I really want to, for the lack of repeating myself, like further express the importance of that. Because when you get to the point where it's like a no matter what situation, it's not if it's going to happen, it's when. And there's some things like with money that you're like, okay, let's say it's a phone. Let's say you want the new, I don't know, Apple Watch, whatever it is. Like when you decide that, hey, this is something that I want to achieve, you figure out, your brain starts working ways for you to achieve it. And I think like in many examples, kind of like yours, where maybe it's something bigger, you want to save up, maybe like $5,000 for a down payment on a car, or a house or whatever. You might need a little bit more than that for that. But those and you did touch on it, those um things that you want, that needs to be a new expense. So there's ways that you can do it with like the bank. Like you can make it so that you can't touch, this pot of money until whenever, or else they take a certain percentage from it. So there's ways to get around that. But going back to like the poking of the universe, I think it's almost like twofold. So you got like the one where like you said, it's like really seeing if you want it or dedicated towards it. Um, and then on the other hand, there's this poking of the universe where it's like you decide what you want, and then it also like helps you go towards that direction. Like it will like put things in your field of view. It maybe is a certain person that you need to talk to help you get it. It maybe is a certain tool that you need to use, or some kind of way that gets you to move that needle. And I know, well, I'm not sure the people listening to this, if you listen to the podcast that I was on earlier, or if this is your first time. If this is your first time, maybe I'll kind of like reiterate what I said earlier as well. And that was, and this comes from like Steve Jobs. He's like, you need to be conscious of when you make that decision of what you want, and then wait to see how the world reacts to it. Sometimes it's a minute reaction because it might not be on the path that you're intended to be on. And then sometimes it's a great reaction. So like even, and this can be even on like a small level, you sing, you give somebody a smile, and the effect from that is it brightens their day. And then that positive karma, rubs back on you. Or let's say it was singing, you get a good feeling from that. And then on the mass scale, you could get an even greater sign, in some kind of way. Like for me as well, like I I know the importance of the work that I need to do when it comes to like even like speaking and like coaching and stuff like that. And when I put effort towards that, like I'll just get flooded with different things that help move that needle. And if I like take a day off where like, like leisure, or just doing things that I know is just a time waster, um none of that exponential growth ever happens. And um so yeah, I mean, I hope that answered your
Yeah,
question.
actually, you made, again, as like you did yesterday, you made a very good point, because this is the thing that I also need to add, is that when I feel like I poke the universe by saying, saying this is what I'm going to do, I'm I'm announcing it and going to myself and to the universe, this is what I'm going to do.
And
and
you truly believe it inside too,
Right, right,
right?
right, exactly. So here's what happens. So when the universe throws a few curveballs at me and hits me in the head with it, I go, I don't
Yeah,
stop.
yeah.
And in the past, I would stop because I go, oh, I just got hit in the head. I can't go for it now. I can't do what I was going to do, and
Mm.
and I would stop. And it wasn't until later on in life, as I got older, and I go, yeah, I'm not doing that, just because there were certain things that were so important to me that I said I am not stopping no matter what. And what I
Mm,
found is that when I put it out in the universe and I made that commitment and I said, I don't care how many curveballs I get hit with, I'm going to continue moving forward. All of a sudden, the universe did exactly what you said. It started providing me opportunities to reach it because
mm.
it's almost like I proved myself to the universe. I know there's a lot of people out there going to go, this sounds like a lot of woo woo shit right now, but but I can all I can tell you is from my my I know it's anecdotal, but it's my experience, and it's been an experience of people who I know that when they get past that, it's as if you've convinced the universe, where the universe goes, oh, he means it this time. All right, let's help him
Mm.
out, and then that's what happens. You find people come into your life that
Yes.
you're in the need for something, and all of a sudden, bam, there's a person who has that thing that you need, and they help you out with it, and you're like,
Mm.
you couldn't design it any better. It's just
Right.
so
And like earlier when you said curveball, like there's been many times where I create that space where I know this is something that I'm going to achieve. And then that curveball leads me to somebody that can help me move forward.
right,
So like I'll give you a great example. Like my initial when I was learning about even like the speaking engagement, um, I learned all of the information about what you do on stage, but I hadn't learned how to get, you know, or let me rephrase that. When it comes to the delivery of the message, I had learned that information. But when it came to the point of like getting on stage, like I tried many things. There's curveball after curveball. And then I just, happened to make a post to a like-minded group. And then that got me in contact with somebody that could solve that problem. And that ended up solving it for me.
right.
Um,
That's my thing. It's like I think the universe saw you're not stopping just because you didn't have the answers. You were like, I'm going to find the answers, and you continued moving forward. And the universe is like, okay, he's serious. Let's
yeah.
let's help him out here.
And
That's
you know what, Kurt? We're going to talk about a decent amount of woo-woo stuff today.
as we are.
And eventually, with all of the different things, well, and first off, let me backtrack there. There's something like lucid dreaming used to be considered woo-woo. Guess what? It's been scientifically proven in the last 20 years. So there's a lot of leaps and bounds that have been happening. But then also, I was so skeptical, you know, a good portion of the time, like 6, 7 years ago myself.
Right,
And then after I started seeing the connections, I'm like, how can somebody deny it?
right,
But it's um you have to choose to see it. Let's say, oh, I'm trying to think of a great analogy. But
but you're right. You have to be open to it, and
right.
that's the difference. Is like you said that you were skeptical, and I was. I think you need to be skeptical. You don't
Mm,
you don't want to be one of those people who are going who listen to the stories that we are telling, and they go, oh well, I believe that. I just because they want to, and then of course they're going to they're everything they see is going to manifest itself as something like that because they want to see it so bad. I think when you're
mm,
skeptical and you go, yeah, I don't know about this, that way when you do see it firsthand, you go, wow, now you understand. Now you really do understand.
right.
There's a difference between being skeptical, which I think is healthy, and being cynical, which I don't think is healthy. And
Mm,
because there are people out there who are very cynical. If it's not in the physical world, they don't give they don't even give it
mm,
a second thought because they think everything is physical and they don't realize that it really isn't.
right. There, I think one way for them to like even start seeing this show up more in their life. So it was about 3 years ago. I opened a Google Doc and I'm like, you know what? From this day forward, every intuitive, like super intuitive thought I get, I'm going to write down the time, the the description of what it was, and really kind of like evaluate when I'm receiving those messages. And and once you start gathering that information, you're going to notice that, hey, like, and let's use the cliche version of when you're in the shower,
I was
you
gonna
get
say
those
when you're
good.
sitting on the toilet, that's where most men get their inspiration.
Right.
It's because it's the one place we can go and have 5 minutes of quiet, So
Right. That's very true. But sometimes I know it's also like times sensitive for me. So like for me, I don't typically stay up too late, but I notice that like the times that like I'll stay up until 1 or 2 in the morning, like I'll get some just creative ideas and I'll take action on them, because if you don't take action on those ideas, they're nothing. And those ones really move the needle for me.
yeah,
Also, when I do nature walks, that's like another thing that I'm really trying to be more dedicated towards. Like just taking 30 minutes, even though I live in the city, there's still trees. It's not as much as a nature walk as a city walk, but like there will be some great downloads during that time. And I just, yeah, be conscious of when is your time when you're receiving those messages, and then put them into action.
right. And I do, the same thing happens to me as well. Is when I take walks, I'm always my most creative. Or like you said, if I'm up at 1 or 2 in the morning, and it always happens, I'm like, okay, it's time for me to go to bed. And all of a sudden, I'll get this brainstorm, and then I get another idea and another idea, and then it's like 4 in the morning. I'm like, okay, enough with the ideas right now. It's like
Yeah, sometimes you just can't shut it off.
you can't. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Like, okay, and eventually we're going to talk about this as well. But so I had never done marijuana until I came to California. And the creativity that I get when I do, so like I said, nature walks, I already get that creativeness. Now, when I combine the both, oh my goodness, it just like sometimes it won't stop coming. And those ones I call my high ideas, my high ideas.
I like that. Did you come up with
Actually, my nurse did, but
oh, well,
yeah.
your
But
nurse is
anyway,
a genius.
it was great. But that's exactly what it is. And you know what? High ideas was a high idea itself. So yeah. But anyways, yeah, there. So now when I combine the both, I'm like, there's just this flood of information. And there's one point where like and I'll set like my intention. Oh, okay, let's talk about that first, because like intentions are huge. So
Right.
now when you are going to do a meditation, like an astral projection, lucid dreaming, even like setting in an intention of what you do want to receive, that is like super important, because then you're like being super specific with yourself, with the universe, on what you do want to know. And um oh, and now I forgot where I was right before that. um Back to the Alzheimer's there, like yesterday a couple times. But what I remembered, I'll get back to where I was.
Okay, so you were talking about specific intentions, like you like you
Right.
in order to do these things. So all right, so let's kind of segue right now, since you kind of forgot your thoughts. So let's segue into astral projection. Now, for people who
Mm,
don't know what astral projection is when your spirit leaves your body. And it goes into and you're able to travel into these realms. I've only experienced it once in my life, only once, and I would love to experience it again. Um,
mm,
and I don't know how that's done. Like I don't even know how it
Okay.
happened that night. I will say this, that it happened to my sister because I saw my sister in this realm and we had a conversation. It was a short one. And to be honest with you, I don't really, because it was many years ago. But I talked to her about it. She had that experience as well. It was the freakiest thing I probably have
Mm,
ever experienced in my life, because it wasn't something that was I didn't have intentions to do this. In fact, I didn't even know what astral projection was until that happened to me. And then I had to research and go, what in the heck was this and how did it happen and all this stuff. And so for my sister and I to have the same experience at the same time and be able to relate to each other what, the same experience that we had in the conversation that we had.
right.
To this day, I cannot explain it. And you think when things like that happen, you go, I don't know. I think you would think, oh man, that is so unbelievable that it would it would have this effect on you where you go, that is so powerful. But it's just like everything else. After time passes, the power of it kind of fades, and you kind of forget
Mm,
like how amazing that experience really was, and
sure.
and how it's in what its possibilities are. So have you had personal experience with astral projection?
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay.
And and this is a conversation just like our last. There's so much complexity to it, and I have so much to like decode, and it's like evaluating like which information is like the most important, so they get the overarching idea and then get into specifics as well. So I'm going to explain the best, I can possible, and hopefully, it makes connecting sense. But when it comes to astral projection, my foster dad, the one that I lived with the last, I only lived with him and his wife for 1 year. This was right before my accident. So that so my foster dad, that guy, he had experienced it as a young kid, and then also his sister and some of his other siblings had been able to achieve it at such a young age. And he kind of like reintroduced me to it, because going back to my biological family, I only lived with my biological dad for like the first 7 years, then we were separated. Then I lived with him like a year after that. And he was pretty big into like lucid dreaming and some other things as well. But I kind of had nearly forgotten about it. Nearly like you had that great experience, then it faded, right? So I
Right.
had those great experiences, and then mine faded until 3 families later, and then there was another father figure that had talked about these different occurrences. So then it's like, oh, I'll get into the practice again. And I remember doing one meditation when I was like 15, and I was focusing on the breath. I set my intention. Once again, intention is huge. I set my intention of what I wanted to do, and and my experience for that one, my hands like got stuck in like a 90, and then my thumb got stuck in between my middle and pointer. Now this had never happened to him before, but my hands were stuck like that, to the point where I was even scared. I'm like, what the heck's happening? Why can't I move my hand? It's stuck. And like then I had to like meditate on the idea of releasing that. And but anyway, so I was just like fascinated by the work. I don't know if you've ever like had like a pendulum and like
Oh
went
yeah.
down that rabbit hole as well. I have like a tiger's eye one. But um but going back to the astral projection, he's just teaching me all those different things. And every person is different. When we talk about lucid dreaming later on, I'm going to tell you about different techniques that you can use. Now, some are known as like the Holy Grail that can actually further help you down that area, and some, definitely are easier or harder, but depending on who you are, it will help you, or some will just work for you better. So when it comes to even the acts of being able to astral project, the easiest strategy I've found is you lay in bed and you put your arms, by your side. You don't cross your legs, have your eyes closed, obviously, and you just do a little practice of a meditation. And and for this meditation, you imagine yourself um, getting off the bed. And when you do this, you need to be in first person, not third, which meaning when I am getting off the bed, I'm not looking at myself. If I'm laying down, I'm not imagining looking at myself,
Right.
walking through the room. No, I am literally walking through the room. And this is known as your astral body. Now, some people, they'll see like a cord um, connecting their physical to their astral. Some people don't. So depending on you, it could be either or. I think also there is a confusion with lucid dreaming and astral projection because they're very similar but very different as well. And going back to the meditation, so when you're laying there, you want to pick 3 objects in your room, and you want to know these objects fairly well: the texture of it, the size of it, the smell, really get every detail of it. So in my room, there's a lamp right behind me, obviously. So that could be one of my objects. I go to that lamp, I start feeling the lamp, and like, really getting a grasp of, just what it is. Then I'll go to the next one and then the next one. And then eventually what's going to happen is you need to have no expectations. So I'm going to say a lot of things. All of these things can happen, or none of them can happen. Sometimes you have a clear guidance of what stage you are, and then sometimes you have no idea where you are. So the best way I can explain it is you're listening to a radio station, right? Right now we're on this physical dimension. And I'm from Minnesota, so I'm gonna use Minnesota terms. Okay. So right now we're on 99.8, yeah, and which was the station in Alexandria, but we want to get to 104.7 KCLD, right? So there's this static. And actually, oh my God, that static is almost what you'll hear in real life. So our pineal gland, which is our third eye, one of our chakras, our pineal gland is responsible for getting us to that point. It's called a third eye for a reason. It's your intuitive eye. One thing you want to cut out: when I brush my teeth, I use Himalaya toothpaste that's fluoride free, because fluoride does calcify your pineal gland.
Mm.
Um, and fluoride really isn't,
It's
even
not.
good.
Yeah.
It's not even good for your teeth. Like, guys, if you're listening to this, like, it's like one of the biggest lies out there. They found a huge fluoride deposit, and they're like, oh, this really isn't good for anything. Maybe if people put it in their mouth and spit it out, it'll be okay. So like it's not even good for you. But anyways, so
Well, let me ask you this. Let me stop you just
yeah.
for a second. One, I want to say something about fluoride. You're absolutely 100% correct. There was a study done many years ago in Sweden. They did this large uh, study and found that in fact, their finding was is that there is little to no benefit by having fluoride in your toothpaste. It doesn't do anything for your teeth, and they said, and even if it did, it wouldn't outweigh the risk, the health risk that it causes to you for using it. And so World War II, when these metal companies were were helping to build the planes and stuff for the U.S., there was this waste, and fluoride was part of that waste. And they said, we want to do something with this waste. We want to be able to profit off of it, and that was part of it as well. Um, but when you okay, so like you said, you can be intention, like, because I've laid in bed many times with the intention of I want to astral project, and
Hmm.
I have not had that happen. But what I want to ask you, when this happens, has this happened since you've had the accident? Have you
Yes.
Okay, so when when you when you're projecting, are you do you see yourself as in your wheelchair? Do you see yourself without it? Do you just see, are you able to move your body the way you would before the accident, or
So a little bit of both. So I see myself in a abled form,
okay,
and I remember trying to open the door, not being able to. Obviously, it's in the third dimension. So I just went through the door,
right,
and and I wouldn't worry as much of like like your physical form. Like a lot of people like, oh my goodness, they were like, what's going to happen to, my physical body? And you have no reason to fear. You can't get possessed from it. And guess what? You don't even want to think about your physical body, because the moment you do, you're going to snap back into it.
right,
And there was now this was one experience that I had where after 8 times, or after 6 times, I wanted it to stop, and I had a couple more. So I practiced this meditation. This one wasn't the one I was talking about. It was a more advanced version, and then finally I felt the shift. And I want to talk about that shift as well, because I know, like I was talking about, like having no expectation. So here are some things that might happen. So when you are laying down, you want to be conscious of when your energy dips, okay? Because most of us only have two states of consciousness. We're either awake or we're asleep, and you can't base it off of those two states, or else it's never going to happen. This is a stand-alone state. So let me give you an example. We know the tiredness feeling, right?
oh
So,
yeah,
like, the feeling right when you're getting tired right before you go to bed. Just because you have that state doesn't mean you still can't watch a little TV, scroll through Facebook, throw. So, we have these different states. And this is a state in its own right. And the more that you practice and the more that you experience the state, the easier it will be for you to tap into it, because you're like, okay, I know which vibrational state I'm looking for, and I'm going to embrace that. So throughout the day, you're going to notice when your energy dips, and then you get like that energy back. Like it's almost like your second wind, if you've heard that phrase before. So when you get that second wind, that's kind of when you want to do it. Your energy just dipped, and you got that second wind. Okay, great, lay down. Because we don't want you so tired that you're going to fall asleep, but we want you tired enough that you can trick your body. So there's this thing called mind body independence. Our mind isn't in control of our body, just as our body isn't in control of our mind. So we can grow hair, we can grow our fingernails, digest food without our mind consciously of it. And just as the same way, our body isn't exactly sure where our mind is at. That's why we go through this thing called sleep paralysis. So you go through this thing called sleep paralysis each night, so that you don't interact your dreams. In your dream, you're jumping out a window. Your body doesn't want you freaking jumping out a window, in real life.
right,
So it's going to paralyze you. And this is it's called a heavy lead blanket sensation. And I remember my first time feeling this sensation after my accident. And what it is it's like this tingle that like comes up from your feet and then eventually it comes up throughout your body. And then when you have this sensation, you're paralyzed. I remember like, so I can move my arms, right? So I remember that finally getting to this point where the heavy lead blanket came up, and then like, okay, I'm gonna test it. I'm gonna try and move my arm. Guess what? I couldn't. And if anybody knows paralysis, it's me being paralyzed. And most people, when they get paralysis, they try to regain it. I try to lose more. So but anyway, so I move my arms. I'm like, wow, this feels just like my legs do. And but before you get to that sensation, you need to trick your body. So there's this thing called a rollover signal. Your body, before it paralyzes you, because it would be a huge mistake if your body paralyzed you before you were actually asleep. So what it does is it sends you this rollover signal. That's a technical term. So when you're laying in bed, your body will be like, Alex, your nose itches. Alex, roll to your left side. Alex, scratch your knee. And if you listen to that signal, your body knows you're awake. It's like, oh, Alex is awake because he, we sent him a signal and he responded to it. But if you ignore that signal long enough, then the body's like, okay, Alex is asleep. Let's paralyze him before he interacts his dreams. And in that paralysis spot, you might also notice this thing called hypnagogic imagery. And what that is eventually first, it's just shapes, in all different sizes. And then eventually that as well and this is where there's a cross. So depending on what intention you set, this can bring you into lucid dreaming or it can bring you into astral projection. And sometimes you aren't going to feel that heavy lead blanket feeling. Sometimes you're just gonna like be there. And like I said, it's a very complex, and I'm trying to explain it the best I can. But in that moment, that's when you need to exit. So now you felt it. So there's this one, it's called the rope technique. That's another technique you can use where you imagine this rope. This is one of the oldest techniques there are for astral projection. You imagine this rope, the smell of it, the feel of it, and you just imagine yourself pulling yourself out of your body, pulling your astral body out of your physical one. And in doing so, then you get to the point where you have exited. So those are some powerful techniques.
Now, I want to make sure I let the viewers and listeners know that you never smoked pot until you moved out to California.
Exactly.
I didn't do pot until last week, and I'm 60. Okay, so all these years I never smoked pot, never did drugs, except for DMT last year, which we'll talk about that, because I never wanted to do drugs just to do them, to be part of a group or something. And
Right.
now that I'm older, I want to experience these things, because while I understand, that matter is made up of vibration, that it's not solid like we think it is. Everything I had heard about DMT, that the experience that you have on it is that you actually that you can feel this. And I was like, so I can understand it logically, but I wanted to feel that. I wanted to experience that. And that's what DMT did for me. It was just an amazing experience for me. So the reason I tell you this is because I know there are people out there who are listening and they're going, "Oh yeah, you guys were high when you went through this," but I want them to know that I wasn't high.
I've never went through an astral projection high. Never.
Yeah, I don't. Do
And
you think it's even possible? I mean, I don't know. I just that's why I'm asking.
you know what? I mean, the best way that I can explain marijuana is it kind of like times 10 the experience. Food is 10 times good. If you're a person that has a lot of anxiety, Sometimes it actually helps with that. Sometimes it makes that anxiety 10 times worse, or you're 10 times more paranoid. So like there's certain people. Also, astral projection, I've been saying this for years. If you're a negative person, if you're into some dark things, astral projection is not for you, because you'll get there and you're going to see a side of it that is not, that's going to scare you. Okay. But if you're in a good place, you're going to be able to experience these things positively. And then sometimes you might have a negative experience, but guess what? I've been food poisoned by lasagna twice. Does that mean I never eat lasagna again? No, that would be, stupid of me.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, like, they're like, oh no, when you astral project, you're gonna have a bad trip. Or and this is without drugs. Or if you do a drug, oh, you're gonna have a bad trip. But I think when you view it like that, where it's like, okay, you had bad lasagna, let's get back on the horse again. And let's go back to even that. In Minnesota, marijuana is illegal. I hadn't, done that until I came here, and I've only experimented in the last like year. And and even when it comes to like lucid dreaming and astral projection, I've been lucid dreaming for like 15 years, astral projection for like 12. Um, and for me, lucid dreaming is way more easier to achieve than astral projection. Um, but those things are capable, or you are capable of doing them without anything. Now, doing things like mushrooms and LSD now, or DMT, ayahuasca is something that I would love to try. Now that one really knocks you um, um, physically, but then it puts you in a very high spiritual state. Um,
Yeah.
so I've noticed, like, with and this is the only, like, for me, I haven't tried any of the other things. The only reason I've tried those two things is because I have an interest in lucid dreaming and astral projection, and I hate the word hallucinogen, because they're like, oh, you're hallucinating. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, you're really just opening your third eye, and you're allowing yourself to see what you typically can't see. And you were going to say something, Kurt?
That's well put. I was going to say, um, well, I had a few things because when you said ayahuasca, the only reason, because you know that you can go down to South America, and there's retreats down there that you can have this like week-long experience with ayahuasca. And I thought, oh, that would be so cool, because ayahuasca, because it's more where DMT is a very short trip, and I was
Right.
because
Very short.
maybe
Even though it feels like it's a long time.
right. Well, let me tell you,
It, mm,
when I did it, and maybe it's because I'd never done drugs before, but I just heard, oh, it's going to be right around 10 minutes. I go, okay, that's cool. We'll see what happens. Mine ended up being 40 minutes. And it was so intense at one point. Yes, it was so intense.
wow.
I was like, okay, this has been long enough. I'm ready to get out of here. Now, I'm the kind of person that my whole life I've always been in control of, if I say, okay, I'm done, I'm done. You know, for the first time in my life, I was like, okay, I'm done with this. Wake up. And that didn't happen. You're in control. And so I started going, okay, why can't I come out of this? And so I didn't panic, but I started to go, wait, what's going on? And then I realized, yeah, you're not getting out of this. It's not, you've got to
Mm,
ride this out. And I said, well, you know what? I want to experience this fully. So relax, sit back and enjoy it, and experience
yes.
all of it. And I did it.
Yeah.
And it was such a great experience. And it was the most unreal experience, because I was aware of two worlds at one time.
Mm,
This world that I was in, and my physical world, and I was able to understand. Like, I didn't think the mind was capable of being in two places at once, and yet that's
mm,
the best way I could describe it, is that it was in two places at once. with ayahuasca, I've heard that it's this long term thing that you go through, but I also heard that people, like it's done wonders. Like there's people who were heroin addicts and stuff, and they go down there, they
Yes.
do that, and then all of a sudden they don't need heroin or anything else ever again. But I also
Oh,
heard that they shit their
hmm.
pants too, and I was like, I don't want to do that.
Maybe they're just shitting all the heroin out. You never know.
It might be.
Well, there's a couple of things that you said that I want to touch on real quick.
Sure.
And like when you go experience these different things, you're going beyond space and time. And just those words, space and time, is really hard to convey to someone that's never done it before.
Right.
Because the experiences that I had with astral projection, yeah, it happened in this small window of maybe anywhere from 10 to 40 minutes, but it felt like I was in there for hours.
Right.
And okay, so there's this monk that I met recently, and 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 here's another thing. Like, I missed my bus, but every time I miss something that I feel like I have to go on, I'll meet somebody that I needed to meet, and it would have never happened if the I would have missed the bus, or if I would have made that bus.
Right.
So I missed the bus, and I happened to be talking to this monk. I don't know why I didn't realize they were a monk when they had that red stuff, because like the question, they came up to me and they're like, Alex, or they didn't know my name, but they're like, hey, do you know the difference between present perfect tense and just perfect tense? And then I'm like, well, even though I have a bachelor's in education, boy, I think it's been probably like 8 years since I've worked at present perfect tense. But I tried to recall it the best I could. We ended up looking online, yada yada yada. But then eventually we got talking about meditation and stuff, and I told her where I was at. And I guess there's like 4 levels of meditation. And I was telling her about my experiences with lucid dreaming, astral projection, just meditation in general, how I can use it even as like a pain relief. So like the first time I ever got my eyebrows threaded, it was painful, right? And then I'm like, okay, next time I'm doing this, I'm going to meditate beforehand so that I can be focusing on the breath and something. And this is also like, I don't know if you guys ever seen like the video of like those monks that started themselves on fire during the Vietnam War, but them also, they weren't screaming or they didn't show any pain, because we can shut
Right.
off those pain receptors with meditation. And which is what I was doing. So I was telling her like what I could do with this state, and she's like, Alex, I think you're at level 3 of level 4 when it comes to like Buddhist meditation. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then I'm like, what's level 4? And she's like, level 4 is. And then she gave me an example. She was like, I had this friend that was a monk for a couple years. They had some problems. They moved over to Tibet. They did their 2 years, and then they went back to the country that they lived in, and they had visited some old friends, and the old friends were drinkers, and they're like, hey, I suppose you can't drink anymore because you're a monk. And they were just like laughing, like, no, I still can drink. And so they were doing like 2 to 3 shots and they were done, right? He did 10 shots and he walked out there like he hadn't taken any, because
Right.
monks, they can separate the mind and the body. And what's interesting with me, at first, when I had tried even just weed, like I'm like, okay, definitely not answering any phone calls that are important. But but now what I found, even with LSD, for me, I can shut it off like a switch. Like I can get back to this normal state just as easily as 10 seconds ago. I was in a whole different state of consciousness, which I know most people can't do that. But but yeah, we just have these different states that we can tap into, and the more you practice tapping into them, the more you can achieve it.
Well, this may be semantics, but what you just described as meditation, I've always described as self hypnosis, because I do hypnosis and I've done hypnotherapy for for almost 20 years, and with clients, and of course I use self hypnosis as well. And
Mm.
and that ability to shut down the pain receptors is something that it's really remarkable. To where you can experience things and go, and it really does come down to, if you want to understand just how much the mind controls things as far as what happens. I'll give you an example. I was cooking, and something happened where I had boiling water, that not
Mm.
like a lot, just like a few drops or something, which I go, normally that was going to blister, and I say, no, that's not going to blister, it won't blister up, and it didn't. Where normally I guarantee you it would have blistered. And it's
Mm.
and I can assure you there's times where people get burned, and where it probably wasn't hot enough to blister, but they said, oh, they think it's going to blister, and so it does. The body really
Mm.
does react to what the mind tells it to do, and so it
100%.
and what it believes. And so you're right. There's just this ability. Like I don't drink very often, but when I do, I can drink everybody under the table, because I have a belief alcohol doesn't affect me. Now, of course, it doesn't hurt that I'm usually twice the size of everybody else, so I'm drinking. But it doesn't have the effect on me. Like, I will sit down and drink an ungodly amount of liquor, and people are just looking at me, and I'm fine. It takes a lot for me to get to that point. And I believe honestly that most of it's because I go, it doesn't have the same effect on me that it has on others. And there was another study done that shows that the mind probably plays more of a role than you would think, because they did a study where they did it at a college where they served these college students at a party non-alcoholic beer, but they didn't tell them it was non-alcoholic. And all of a
Mm.
sudden, these students started acting like they were drunk. There was no alcohol in the beer, but they started acting like they were drunk because they believed, oh, I get drunk after 2 or 3 beers. I've had three, so I must be drunk. And so, again, I just find the mind so fascinating, and what it does. And I want to tell you this one story. I had a personal training client of mine who smoked, and she
Mm.
came to me. She found out that I did hypnotherapy, and she said, "Can you help me to stop smoking?" And I said, "Of course." I said, That's one of the easier things to do." And she said, "Really?" I go, "Yeah, it's just, it's just a matter of understanding what you go through, and then I'll write the script up for you, and the suggestions, and we'll get through it." So I asked her I asked her the question that I normally ask, and I said, "Have
Yeah.
you ever gone any period of time where you didn't smoke for any length of time?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I go, "When's that?" She goes, "When I visit my parents." And I said, "So your parents don't know you smoke?" And she goes, "No." And I said, "So, like, what's the longest period that you go when you visit them?" She goes, 2 to 3 weeks." She goes, and I go, "And you don't smoke anything for 3 weeks?" And she goes, "No." I go, I said, "Do you ever have any withdrawal symptoms?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Okay,
Mm.
great." So I after I asked her all the questions, I wrote out the suggestions, and then the next day we had our session and put her under. And then and I want to remind you about this too, because you made mention of space and time. After I tell you this, so I give her the suggestions, and I am so cocky, because I'm like, I nailed this. This is going to be so great. Tomorrow she's going to come in and tell me how she didn't smoke anything, and and she feels amazing, and all this.
Yeah.
Day she comes in, she goes, "Kurt," and I go, "Yeah." I said, "How was everything?" She goes, "Horrible." And I go, "What?" She goes,
Mm.
"Smoked 3 cigarettes last night." And I go, "What?" And I go, "Did you want to smoke?" And she goes, "No, I didn't want to smoke." And I go, "Well, then why did you?" And she said, "Because I had withdrawal symptoms." And all this, in my suggestions, I did not say anything about not having withdrawal symptoms, because she said she'd never
She
had them.
never had
So
them.
I didn't think it was needed to put in there. The mind found a way around my suggestions.
Ah.
Said, "Oh, we're going to make you smoke." And for the first time, she had withdrawal symptoms. So I had to go back and redo the suggestions. And this time I added, about the withdrawal symptoms. And then she never smoked again after that. And it was, and it so, but I thought, how brilliant was that mind to find a like that one little loophole to get through to what it wanted to do. But one of the things I tell people, like when I do hypnotherapy, is they, because many of them because they have this idea of what they think hypnosis is and what they're supposed to feel like, and no matter how I explain it to them, they still hold on to this concept of something completely different than what it is. And so they'll come out of it and they'll go, I don't even know if I was hypnotized. And I go, yeah, maybe you weren't. I said, just out of curiosity, how much time do you think passed? And they go, oh, probably about 10 minutes. I go, yeah, you were there for an hour and 10 minutes or hour and 15 minutes. I go, that's how long you've been under. And they had no clue. And I go, that's how you know hypnosis works, because you thought you were sitting there for 10 minutes and you were there for an hour longer than what you really were sitting there, and they had no
Wow.
idea. So you're right about the time and how it feels so much longer than what it really is. So
Yeah, that's interesting. And like, when it comes to like hypnotherapy, like I've done some self hypnosis where like I can make it so I can't open my eyes.
oh
No
yeah.
matter how hard I try, those eyes are stuck. And I can do that within, well, now that I've practiced a lot, I probably take me like 30 seconds. But there's like a good like 2 to 3, minute meditation or hypnosis. That somebody could practice. And I don't know. I think it's a very. I would love to hear more on that just from you, because like I remember even my senior year there was this um, guy that came in for our. It was like before we graduate, or maybe it was the week after we graduated. I'm not sure, but they had like a little party for us, and people were hypnotized and doing different things, and I just find it as such like a beautiful state, and it's like we can achieve these different things, and I mean some obviously take more practice than others, but yeah, they're definitely neat places to get into.
You want
Also on the topic of lucid dreaming, um, let me know when you want to go down that one as well, because I'd
okay?
love to.
Let me tell you. I want to tell you one funny story about
Yeah.
stage hypnosis. So I have a dear friend of mine who is he really is a great hypnotist. And
Mm,
we were doing a show at a gay bar, and so
mm,
and we were doing it for like 4 weeks in a row or something like that, and so I would assist him on it. And um so it's no surprise, everybody who listens to my show knows I'm gay and knows I like twinks, as they're called. And so I wanted to do at the end of the show, we have one person up on stage, and what he does is he gets them to have an orgasm. Now, it's
mm,
done on purpose. Like it's not done to be funny. It's done to show the power of hypnosis and what it can do.
mm.
And so we have
I'm
uh,
taking notes now.
okay.
Uh,
So
uh,
there's a woman on stage who's part of our crew, and she's
yeah.
great, and so she's up there to assist as well. So I always thought, God, I wish he would pick a twink sometime. I'd just love to see that happen. And there was one time where he really wanted to be the guy, but I knew Ralph wasn't going to pick him because Ralph is straight, and so Ralph wanted to have a female up there. So he picks this person, and we go through it, and I'm laughing. I'm laughing because what Ralph doesn't realize is that he did not pick a female. He picked a male who was dressed as a female.
I love it.
It wasn't even a trans person. It was just a cross dresser. But to this person's credit, he really did look like a female. But I mean, those of us who are part of that world, I mean, we can tell there's certain signs that you can tell. And so you see this guy on stage who he thinks is a female, and he orgasms on stage. And fortunately, he wasn't wearing pants. He was wearing a dress so that it could cover up anything that might have otherwise. And so
You must have had it taped down pretty good.
after the show, I go, Ralph, I go, did you realize? I go, that's a man. He goes, what? And I go, yes. I go, that's not a woman. And so, but still, the guy ends up coming up to him after the show, as they always did, and they go, I really didn't think this would happen. I did not think that I would do that, and without fail, because there's times where people will go, oh, that's fake. They're part of the show and they're just acting it out. You don't act out an orgasm on stage.
Yeah, that's one where you can see the genuine
exactly the result.
That's so fun. You want to know something? So after my accident, even, and now this is going to get pretty personal.
All right. I'm sure our audience likes personal, so.
Oh, okay.
If you don't, you might want to shut it off here.
Yeah, right. If not, maybe skip to this timestamp, even though we can't show them a timestamp.
Hold on one second. I got the boss of the house here trying to.
Oh, little kitty witty.
Hey.
You get talking about dick, and guess what comes?
Exactly.
Anyways, okay, we're getting dirty now.
So go on. Please.
But it's a cute cat, very cute cat.
Yeah, he's great.
So anyways, after my accident, there are things that I can't, physically do anymore. And even when it comes to sensation, like pretty much like nipple line down, I have no sensation. And this kind of makes it difficult to feel the stimuli to get you to the point of orgasm, right? Because you can't feel it anymore. But there's this thing called neuroplasticity that our brain, tries to rewire new pathways for individuals with paralysis. Like there's this one quad that I read and learned about. He actually had a documentary where his thumb became his surrogate penis. And like he used to be able, and still, he would like suck his, well, not necessarily him sucking, but somebody else, suck his thumb. Like, wait a second here.
Nothing wrong with that.
We know if we could reach, we probably would too, right?
I won't say anything. Go on.
Okay. So anyways, and he knows like the difference between like, massage and actually like, rubbing, right? And I never had that surrogate thumb penis. At the same time, like, the areas that I could feel did, become even more sensitive. Like even when it comes to other sense or the senses, the five senses, like I lost so much sensation that I remember like my teeth just hurting. And then I asked the doctor to look at my teeth, couldn't find anything wrong with the teeth. And he's like, Alex, there's nothing wrong with your teeth because you lost so much. Now the spots that you can feel is, super sensitive. Also, somebody used to barely shut the door. It would feel like they slammed the door.
Right.
So my hearing got better. Also, my vision. I started to see people without their clothes on. Okay, no, just kidding. That wasn't part of it. But I thought it was well. Yeah, cover that up there. They're great. But with the topic, I thought it was well suited to put that joke in there. But anyways, so I go through this one thing called autonomic dysreflexia, right? And that's where the body um, doesn't know what's going on where I can't feel. So it sends me into, and this is known as a life-threatening medical emergency, but it sends me into an episode where I know there's something wrong in the place where I can't feel, and I know it needs to be addressed. Most of the time it's urine related. I do an in and out catheter, boom, done. Sometimes I'm in one position too long. Could be tight clothing, could be, bowel, could be many different things. And just how it doesn't know pain, it doesn't know the difference between pleasure as well.
Right.
So like on one of the symptoms of AD is my hands become ice cold. I get blotchy on the chest. If it's super bad, sometimes I'll get like a little sweaty neck or like a pounding headache when it gets to like a very bad point. But what I noticed is like even when I would try different things, actually, I would get like the blotchy chest. I really want to get some other feelings, and it almost like look like imagine a cow, right? They have like those different like white and black,
Right.
spotches, right? It's almost like that, but it's red, and so that's when you're doing a good job, as if the cows come home. But anyways, there was different. Obviously, I can't do it myself, right? I'm physically impaired. I've tried after like the first year, I actually gave up on like masturbation at completely. I haven't masturbated for 7 years because it just doesn't work. I tried for a year. I realized that, I wasn't physically capable of doing it, and I no longer participate in that. Um, and I need, somebody else to help, right? And like throughout the different times and encounters that I've had, like I said, I've been able to get to the blotchy point. There's a couple times where it's like I almost felt like that sensation. But I did this one meditation, and it wasn't necessarily labeled as like a tantric meditation, but I felt so much energy and pleasure from that meditation, more than anything that I had ever tried. And it really just shows like the power of your mind on these different states that you can put yourself in.
So let me ask you this, because when there are people who talk about who've lost limbs, for instance, and
Yeah.
like they might have lost the lower part of their leg, and they can feel it where it's itching, even though their leg isn't there anymore. It's this phantom feeling that they have, and yet it needs to be scratched, sort of thing.
Mhm.
So do you have that? Do you ever experience that? I mean, in from like you said, from the nipple line down, do you ever experience where you have a feeling there,
Only
or
when I bring awareness to it. And this
okay,
is where I'm also different than many individuals. Like now that you talked about it, yeah, my foot's asleep. And that's like the best explanation. I'm like, wow, thanks there, Powers. What a dick. If wasn't feeling good enough, you want to make me feel pain too. Wow.
keep you aware, sir.
But yeah, no, I'm joking.
I
I'm
know.
joking. But anyways, like I remember right after my accident, like it being an issue. And I'm like, guys, because I back before my accident, when your foot's asleep, it's a painful feeling.
Yeah.
I got these constant little pricklies. And now I have that 24/7, 365. And some people take medication to help stop that pain receptor. But like for me, if you decide to focus on different things, you can like block that out of your mind. And like anytime somebody talks about it, like, and also right now, Kurt, so if you bring attention to where your right foot is laying, now right now you have an idea of what your foot feels like, right?
Right.
Like where it's planted. 10 seconds ago you had no idea
Right.
what your foot was going through, and it's very similar in that aspect. I just block it out. I don't bring attention on something. Like there was one of my nurses, she which is why I had my eyebrows threaded. Her other job is she works at a beauty care, and and uh, and I was talking to the person that owns her dad, and I asked, like, for most people, like, because I asked what this one machine was. He's like, it gets rid of skin tags, and I was like, how bad does that hurt? And he's like, if you believe it hurts, it will hurt.
Right.
If you don't believe it won't hurt, it won't hurt. And it's like, boom. It's like, that's exactly it. And it's a hard place for people to get into, but once they do, it can change their lives.
It's funny because when you say that, because I have like, I want to get more, but right now I only have one tattoo. I go in and I'm thinking this isn't going to hurt, and it didn't. It did not hurt. And people think, oh, you're just trying to act manly, like, oh, you're so tough, and that it didn't hurt. And I'm like, no, it truly did not hurt because I did not
Mm,
believe it was going to hurt, and it didn't. And other people will like be in tears. I'm like, really, over a tattoo? It's like, if it hurts that much, maybe you want to think twice about it and getting and gaining, because if something caused me that much pain, I doubt I would want to go through that. But I do believe you're right that it comes down to like what that gentleman just said. If you believe it's going to hurt, it's going to hurt. If you believe it won't, then it won't.
mm.
And I think
And I mean, even if you think it's gonna hurt, you could also use techniques like I do. That
right.
I knew I was gonna get my eyebrows threaded. Guess what? I'm gonna put myself in a state that my focus, my attention, there we go with attention again.
Right.
My intention is somewhere else. And
There's a guy in Russia. He's known as the Iceman, and I actually used
oh, I love that
right.
guy.
I This winter I have a pool, swimming pool, and that water was ice cold, like where it hurt your bones, that kind of cold.
Mm,
And I jumped in every day for a week. I jumped in, and I was like, and what I did is I found that as I started to use my mind to say, I'm not cold, I'm warm, and I don't go, I'm not cold. I don't use that. I just go, I'm warm, I'm heating up, and my body's hot. This is helping me to, my body temperature is rising. And so what I found is all of a sudden, when I initially jumped in, the water is becoming warmer and warmer to me. Now, is it
mm,
physically becoming warmer? No, it's not. I'm not changing the temperature of that water by my body being in there. And my body, even as big as I am, isn't significant enough to change the temperature of my pool. But
right.
my mind was changing the temperature of my body and going in the
Mm,
opposite direction that you would expect it to. And that's
mm,
that when you learn that kind of control like you have, that's what can that those are the things that can take place. When like when you were talking about the over in Vietnam, and the monks that were over there where they didn't scream when they were on fire because they shut that
right.
out, and that's what it is. They shut it out. And you can actually change it to where you can, as silly as this may sound, you can change it to where it could feel like pleasure. Even pain could become
Yeah.
pleasure. So,
Mm.
um, let's do this. Let's talk about,
Can
yeah,
I mention a couple things on that front though?
yeah,
I
go ahead.
mean, there's also like so much research on how monks can make their right hand warm and then their left hand cold.
Yes.
Like they
Yep.
can change the temperature of their limbs. Also, the health benefits you get from going into something super warm or something super cold
Yep.
is amazing. So for instance, when you go in something cold, your body is like freaking out. They're like, oh my God, guys, we got to reserve our vital organs. So they're going to take the blood from your extremities and bring it into your heart, your liver. Same thing with your feet. The blood's going to come out. And then it's the same thing with the opposite. You go in like a hot tub. They're like, oh my God, guys, we're going to die here. We got to get all of the blood to the extremities, your fingers, your toes, so that we can save those vital organs from getting too warm. And the benefits for that is great. So if anybody if any of you listening like do take time to like do an ice bath and stuff like that, it's so good for you. But then that's kind of just the what I wanted to say. And
Well,
then what was your question?
there's more research even on that, but decades ago they did research where they put people in this hot tub, and for the lack of a better word, but it was this big metal tub where they put them in, and they were slowly raising the temperature up to I can't I don't quote me on it. I know it was over 200 degrees, but I think it was much hotter than that, which would normally either boil a person alive or cook them, and it did nothing to them because of this practice. Like this guy over in Russia, the Iceman, they were able to control what their bodies how their bodies reacted to what was going on in their external environment. And there's a book by Dr. Bruce Lipton. It's called The Biology of Belief, and,
Love Bruce
and
Lipton.
yeah, he's great. And I adhere to I believed what he said for I believed that for years. He just eloquently he put it in a book, and I was like, and said it much better than I could ever say it. So for people who I'm going to tell you, for if you are interested in this conversation at all and what the bodies and mind are capable of doing, get his book, The Biology of Belief. It's just a fantastic read. And then
Mm,
Dr. Bruce Lipton. Um, what I wanted to say is let's move on to lucid tech or lucid lucid technology, lucid dreams. Now, you know, I'd like to because if you tell me how to do this, this might be a life changer here. Because whenever I go to sleep at night, I always try to do lucid dreams. It never works. I mean, but because I always want to
mm.
dream about sex. I always want to have sex dreams. I go, if I'm going to be sleeping, I might as well have fun while I'm sleeping. Never turns out that way. And then when I do on those occasions have a sex dream, I always wake up right before and I'm like,
Ah. Uh, uh,
how do we
well,
how do we get through that?
well, it sounds like what you're doing is something called mild, which is called mnemonic induced lucid dreaming. So that's when you set the intention right before you go to sleep.
Yes.
Um, and out of all of the different techniques, it's probably, not the most successful one for ratio. So wild wake induced lucid dreaming is kind of the holy grail of lucid dreaming. I'm going to oversimplify, but what you do is you go to sleep at your normal time. Make sure you at least get 4 hours in, though. So let's say you go to sleep at 10, then you're going to set your alarm for 2 a.m. And then you're going to wake up, record any dreams. Okay, actually, we got to go with that first. I'm going to finish this and technique, and then I'm going to go on to even more important stuff. So you wake up, and then you write down whatever dream you had, um, audio record it, whatever you do. And then after that, you kind of wait for what I was talking about earlier. You wait for that paralysis to come over, that heavy lead blanket feeling, and then you're gonna see these visuals. And then it's going to go quickly into the dream then. So that's a fairly advanced technique. But the problem that a lot of people have is they aren't remembering their dreams anyways. We all have dreams, just most of you aren't conscious that you have them. So starting a dream journal is so important. Recently, when I got a new iPad because I crushed my old one and I had to upload the new software, the lucid dreaming app that I had, they didn't make an updated version, and I had like over 700 recorded dreams on there, and I was so disappointed to lose them all. But anyways, you want to make sure that you're recording your dreams, because you can, and research shows that we all typically have like one lucid dream a month, but most of us don't even remember that we had them. There's been times where I've lucid dreamed early on, like on one of my first REM stages. So your first REM stage is about an hour and a half after you fall asleep. And then as the night progresses, the REM stages get closer and closer together. So that's why, like with Wild, you know, sleeping for 4 hours and then waking up and then becoming more attentional and aware, you're going to like tap into like where you're going to have more of these REM cycles. Yes, you can have dreams that aren't in the REM cycle, but the majority of them are there. And hey there, kitty. And um, so starting your dream journal is super important. Now this is probably a technique that is more for beginners and even intermediate as well. So what you're going to do is after you start recording your dreams, you're going to notice these things called dream signs. That's in quotes. And what those dream signs is for me is different than what they will be for you. For me, one of my huge dream signs is I'm walking. So I know that I'm dreaming because I'm not able to walk, right?
Right.
So eventually you're going to notice the rhythm. Let's say for you, you get into the car, the steering wheel's always on the opposite side, depending where you are in the world. So use those as ways of testing your reality, which brings us to the next thing. This is called, in quotes, a reality check. And what a reality check is once you find that, and there's two ways of doing it. One is you can take a dream sign and turn it into a reality check, or you can take something in this physical world and bring it into your dream. So one thing that you can do, let's say you don't know your dream signs, everything's fairly normal, you can't figure out, something that's not in this world that is in the other. So one thing you can do is like you can bring it in. So now you're going to just focus on your hand. Every time you see your hand, you're going to do this reality check. So you look at your hand. Let's say you just pick up a pencil. Oh, you see your hand. You're going to be, am I dreaming? And you're going to question your reality. But the most important thing is you really have to question it. You have to question it to the point where you're looking like stupid, like what the heck is this guy? Yeah, obviously he's awake, right? So you do this because you're going to develop a habit. And throughout the day, every time you look at your hand, you're going to be like, oh my God, am I dreaming? Even in like an important conversation like this, you're going to see your hand. And while you're talking, Kurt, or while I'm talking, you're going to question your reality. So now that's a habit. And now in your dream, you're going to look at your hand and you're going to question your reality. And then boom, you're going to become lucid. And you're going to be like, but now don't get too excited because that's going to wake yourself up. Right. But then you can use that. So like for me, I also use movement as a reality check. So when I move my wheelchair, when I transfer from my bed to my wheelchair, when I go from one room to the other room, I'll like, am I walking? Like that will be my reality check.
Right.
So that in my dreams, when I actually do some kind of form of movement, I question that reality. So that is, a more basic technique that works really well. Everybody's different. Some of you, wild is going to work great. Some of you, reality checks are going to be the way of achieving it. And the great thing about this information age is if you go on YouTube, you can even just look up like how to lucid dream, and they will even give you like other techniques like wake back to bed and some other. I actually created a course on lucid dreaming. I had invented 2 techniques that aren't even on the market. Yeah, it's just a very fun stage. And guys, look up on YouTube. It's free as well. So and also just getting the awareness that you want to lucid dream, you should be able to in like 2 to 7 days. Lucid dreaming isn't a difficult state to get in initially. Now, if you want to keep it as a habit, it's like everything, if you want to be good at riding a bike without training wheels, you have to ride that bike. Right. So it's on you.
So so what do you find to be the advantages of lucid dreaming? Like when we talk about hypnosis or
Oh,
meditation um, or things of that matter, there those all we can use those as tools to.
so let's get to the truth of it, right?
Okay.
Right. Okay. So in my dreams, I can walk, I can feel, I can do anything, and even more than what's bound by the laws and regulations of this third dimensional world. If I want to fly, I can fly. And like for me, especially with the topic of sex being, on the forefront, when I get into a lucid dream, like a good portion of the time, I'm like, you know what? I can actually feel everywhere. I'm gonna, take advantage of this moment. Also, it helps people with like PTSD. Let's say you're scared. Oh, which is important. Let's talk about this for a second as well. Let's say you're scared of a certain thing. Let's say you have a reoccurring dream sign, but instead of it being walking, it's like it's something scary. Let's say you have a dream of you're always getting chased or something. Use that to your advantage. So you can use that as a way of like waking yourself up, not physically, um, but mentally inside your dream. And that's actually how like some people, first start lucid dreaming. Their parents tell you, oh, and they don't tell you that you can lucid dream, but they just tell you, don't worry about that. It's just a dream. So then, you're inside, you're like, no, it's just a dream. It's just oh my God, I'm dreaming. And like that's actually how like some people like get their first ones as well.
Wow.
But as for the benefits, yeah, for me, I can feel again. I can walk again. For other people, it can like help you deal with things. Let's say you want to ask your boss for a raise. Guess what? You can practice that in a dream. Let's say you want to have a relationship with somebody. You can practice having that dinner with them. And let's say you just lost your dad, or you just lost a family member. You can have that conversation with them. You could do and be anything. Your imagination is the limit to what you can do.
One of the things would you recommend, even with lucid dreaming, is that while you were saying that, it made me think, because you had talked about writing down your dreams and keeping track of those. It seems like with all these different tools, whether you're using pot or or whether you're using lucid dreams or doing astral projection, to write these experiences down, because it seems to me like they're whether it's your mind, your body, the universe, there are a lot of times there are answers there that you don't want to miss. And I think if you don't write those things down, they may not make sense at the time when you write it down, and then all of a sudden you wake up the next morning, it may make sense then, it may make sense a week from then, or a year from then, but at some point when you go back, you go, that's what that meant. And the reason I say that is because when I did DMT, there was this message that I kept getting when I was in DMT that made no sense to me. And it wasn't until about 2 weeks later, I was doing a session with a hypnosis client, and he said something, and all of a sudden and I don't recall what it was right off the, but what he said jarred my memory, where I go, that's the answer. He told me the answer without even realizing that I did DMT or anything else. But there was something he said, and that was the answer to what I was concerned about when I was doing DMT. And it was amazing. And I could go back and
Mm,
look at what I had recorded. I didn't write this down. I verbally recorded it. My
yeah.
and I went back and I go, that's the answer I was looking for. And so it can be quite amazing when you do that. I think it happens more often than you might think.
I like that a lot. Also, you can talk to these characters when you're doing whatever you are doing, or when I'm doing whatever I'm doing. Like in my lucid dream, I can talk. Like I remember, like I knew I was leaving, and I was trying to hold on. I'm like, wait. And I asked the character, I'm like, what is the meaning of all of this, and why you brought these people together? And they had said to start your senior year off right. And 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 then there's other times where like I've asked some deep questions and deep thoughts, which were in the 700 plus recorded dreams that are now gone, that I have to base off memory. But they can like help you so much. Like you can talk to your higher self. You can, talk to these characters and really get like a different viewpoint of where you maybe need to go in life. And um and then also like even like your body wants you to go into those deeper things. Even like talking about sex again. Yeah, that's a possibility in it. But guess what? Your body mentally sometimes is going to force you to do those other
Right.
activities because underlining they're more important at the time. And just listen and poke and prod and experiment.
That's key word, experiment, and don't be afraid to experiment. And
Yeah.
so for everyone out there, if for those who've done these things, you understand. But for those of you who haven't, those of you who are thinking about it, I want to caution you to understand these are tools to be used to have a greater meaning and a greater understanding of life. And I remember having this dream where I was talking to it, I'll say God, but there was no image of God. Like it wasn't some man sitting, on his throne or something and giving me answers. But I remember just asking, like, what is the whole meaning of life? And he told me the answer, and I was like, oh my God, that's so simple, and yet
Mm.
it makes perfect sense. The thing was, is that as soon as I woke up, I forgot what it was. I was like, took the answer. Like I have the answer to the kid to the most pressing question in life, and now it's gone. So, but write these things down and use them as tools. And whether you're doing DMT or ayahuasca, hypnotherapy, meditation, lucid dreaming, these are all things that we can use. And if you use them with the proper intent, as you say, because intent is everything, it opens up a whole new world. Now, I will say this: do not, for anyone out there who would think about this, do not listen to hypnotherapy tapes or tapes. What am I, from the 80s, 70s? I guess.
While
Don't,
driving.
exactly. Don't listen to hypnotherapy suggestions and stuff while you're driving. Obviously, don't try to meditate when you're driving. Don't try to lucid dream. Don't be smoking pot. Don't do any of those things when you're operating heavy vehicles and things of that nature. Do it in the safety and of your home, and make sure that your surroundings are set. And so one of the things I do when I do hypnosis for people over the phone, I tell them to make sure that your doors are locked, your phones are off, that your stove and oven are off. Make sure everything is safe. But I also tell them that if anything does occur, they'll be able to wake up immediately and be aware of their surroundings. So just be aware that when you use these things, these tools, that's what they are. They're tools, but they're powerful tools, and they need to be used
Mm.
the proper way.
And I remember like my first time lucid dreaming, astral projection. And I mean, I was raised Christian, and now I would say I'm way more spiritual than I am religious. Um, but there's no doubt in my mind, after experiencing that this physical body is it. Not a doubt in my mind. before, I mean, like I said, I was, raised religious. So, I mean, I believed that there was something more, um, but I wasn't 100% sure. No, after you experience something like this, you know that your physical body is not it. You have these different astral forms that you can tap into, and it's such a beautiful thing.
It is. And let me I want to say one more thing, because a lot of times people will say, "Well, you only had this experience because someone told you that that's what you were going to do." So when I did DMT, my friend did tell me, he said, that you're going to hear a voice and it's going to be you, but it's not you. And I'll be damned if that didn't happen. I'm telling you, it was the weirdest thing. There was this voice that was me telling me what to do, but it wasn't me. And it was so strange.
Mm.
But I'll tell you, when I had my one time event with astral projection, I knew nothing about it, astral projection, or what it was. And yet, after having the experience, I went to learn about it, and I was like, holy crap. Like, I was I read about this realm that you're not supposed to go into. Like, it's off limits sort of thing. And
Mm.
I remember being there, and I remember, I don't know, talking or mentally talking to somebody or something, and saying, "Why can't I go in there?" And they go, "That's off limits." So after I came out of my this experience, and I read up on it, and then it's talking about this realm that I had asked about, and I was like, "Wow," because again, I knew nothing about astral projection, so it wasn't like someone had planted that into my mind. I
Right.
experienced it was something I truly experienced, that was truly there. I read about it, and it's the same thing that everyone else experienced too, or that many people probably experience. So,
One of the most powerful stories I've heard about DMT. I haven't tried that one, more than willing to, but one of the most like mind-boggling one I had heard is there's this one guy that had practiced it, a few different times, and he had met this girl, um, that and now this gets a little bit into reincarnation, but he had met this girl that right now is in a higher dimension, and they had talked, they had been together in previous times, and every time he would try it, he would be with this girl again, and um, and then his friend had heard about DMT and like had asked him about it, and he didn't say anything about his experience or about what you might experience. Guess what? That friend that did the DMT met this girl and was like, "Oh, you must be friends of so and so."
wow.
And then he described to her, like the vibes, what he physically saw, yada, yada, yada. And it was the same exact thing that he
Wow.
had experienced. So I don't know. It's there's just like there's just like so many examples like that where it's like, how can you not
Right.
believe or not even attempt to try? And like recently there's been like the last 40 some years, there's been such a war on drugs.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've been using it for centuries and centuries, and people use it as a way to get to a different level spiritually. And I think it depends on your intent of it. Are you doing it just for a high, or are you doing it,
Right.
for a more purposeful meaning?
Well, I have a personal belief that religion and government both do not want people doing drugs, and that's why there's such a war on it. Because when you do these things, there's an awakening. There's an understanding that you don't have previous to experiencing these things. And when you do experience these things, all of a sudden you realize all the nonsense that you've been told is bullshit. Like,
Mhm.
like you said, you were raised Christian, and you don't consider yourself religious, you consider yourself spiritual, because you understand that's the important part, not the dogma of whether you get up every Sunday morning and go to a church and pay tithing to, to a church or something. That's not the important part. And
Yeah.
so it's how you live your life. It's who you are. It's the intentions that you set forth as the person that you're going to become. Those are the things that are important. And those are the things that you start to realize when you do these different things. Now, to cover my ass, as they would say, I'm not telling anybody to go out there and try illegal drugs. You do what you do. I'm just telling we're, Alex and I are not we're not saying, hey, you need to go do this. We're telling you our experiences. We're telling you
Yeah.
the anecdotal stories that we're aware of. And here's what and again, as I tell everybody during almost every show, don't believe Alex, don't believe me. You need to do the research yourself. Find out if
Yes.
this is something that would
Yeah.
interest you, and that if it's right for you. Don't go, what, I can get DMT and I can have this experience, where can I find it? So I'm telling you, do your research and see if this is even something that would be
Mm.
for you, and if it's something that you want to experience. And
And sometimes it's not for you right now,
right,
but it's for you down the road. Like I said, like if you're a super negative person, astral projection is not for you,
right,
because you're going to see some dark entities and you're going to see some things that you don't want to see.
right,
So work on yourself, and like, yeah. And I think you really hit it home there, Kurt. And it's sad that we're in a time where we have to cover our asses.
right,
Isn't that just so sad? And like that's one thing that like I wasn't going to like really talk about much, like the religious side of it, but you're 100% right. And like there's so many different like walks where there's many truths and many different things. And I don't want to pull anybody away from any of the thoughts and beliefs they have, but just be willing to be open. Like I remember my foster dad, that's one thing he kept on telling me time after time. He's like, hey, Alex, I'll teach you about this stuff, but you have to be open and willing to try and experiment. And if you don't have that openness, then you will stay closed-minded. And what our brains are is they will try to tell us that we aren't crazy. And we will search out information to justify and clarify where we are. Guess what? Anything that you believe, you can find information to back it up.
right.
But at the same time, there could be, maybe you could only find 10% information to back it up when there's like 90% information disproving it.
Right,
So
exactly.
just, allow yourself to experiment with stuff in life.
There's a gentleman who I'm going to have on the show very soon, who is he's a mind reader, and he talks about
Mm,
his show and what he does in mind reading. And he said, he goes, that I can show people, that this is the truth, and yet, like he'll have two decks of cards, one's rigged and one isn't, but he'll convince them the rigged cards are not. And he goes, and then once they're convinced that those rigged cards are not rigged, there's nothing he can do to show them, to prove to them that like he can show them, go, look, I can prove this is the rigged deck. They won't believe him. Their belief is they're so much more invested in their beliefs than they are the truth. And that's why people have
mm.
such a hard time letting go of their beliefs. And
Oh,
so, um, and again, you said something that made me think our brains are like a sponge. It's like it has this ability to learn so much, but if you
yeah.
don't put it near the water, it's not going to absorb anything. It's like it's just dried out. And that's what happens, is like you said, people they only find what they're looking for to continue to validate their beliefs. And even though it might only be 10% and 90% says, yeah, no, this is not true, they'll hang on to that 10%, and that belief
Mm,
is with a death grip. And and
yes.
and that's why, again, I love what I do for my podcast and having guests like you on, because I want people to think outside the box. I want people to
Mm,
challenge their beliefs, to challenge their perceptions, look at things from different perspectives. And again, you don't have to tell. I'm not saying believe me, believe Kurt. He's the whiz, that knows everything, or believe Alex, he's the whiz that knows everything. I'm saying these are our experiences, and we're sharing these experiences with you so that it might help you decide what you want to do. And
mm. And like even like the different like principles that we worked on in our last conversation. Like another thing I tell people is like, hey, try just one of them out for a month. If it
right.
works for you, great. If it doesn't, throw it out. That's your choice.
Right. Don't just
And
say, "Oh, Alex is so like." I can see because people do this. You like the principles that we talked about yesterday and the other show. People go, "That doesn't work." Well, how do you know? You never tried.
mm,
You're just saying that what Alex just told you is you don't want to believe that it works, so you just simply say it doesn't work, even though you've never tried it. You know,
mm.
and and so yeah, it's just
And
like you said,
some
it's
people,
the same.
it's because they don't want to know the truth.
Right. That's
Like
the majority of people.
responsibility. If there's a person that's so cynical that truly is playing that victim mentality to a T, and I tell them that there's this thing called responsibility, oh, they are pissed at
Oh,
me.
yeah,
They're like,
exactly.
what? I'm not responsible for my life. This happened in this event and that event. And they just, yeah,
Yeah, all you
it's
can
it's
do is go, all I can do is go, "You're right. You're not responsible." That's what I they look like, I don't know if that was what that meant, but yeah.
there's this one person that I was talking to, and like I knew the overarching theme. If you would take responsibility, like sometimes I don't like to use that one as much because that one it's a freaking
Yeah.
face slapper. And he's like, "Come on, man, I'm depressed over here," and I'm like, "This will get you out of that depression. That's why I'm telling you it."
Right.
And it's like, I know, that's why I'm trying to tell you. I'm like I said, it's not a blame game, it's an awareness game.
People
And
don't. They don't want to understand. It's like, I talked to this guy. I was at this I don't even remember what it was. It was some gathering or something. And I was there with some people and they were asking me questions about hypnotherapy and stuff. And this guy walks up and he's obviously overweight, by a good 30 plus pounds. And he goes, "Well, hypnosis doesn't work with me." And I go, "Well, how do you know? Have you ever been hypnotized?" He goes, "No, it doesn't work with me. I know it doesn't because my mind's too strong." And I said, "Okay, well, first, let me clarify something. Those who have strong minds tend to be the best subjects because they're able to focus better than others. So the smarter you are, the easier it is to hypnotize you because you allow yourself to be focused." I said, secondly, and I said, and I don't mean any disrespect with this, but I said, if your mind is so strong, then why are you 30 plus pounds overweight? Because if your mind was so strong, your mind would say, I don't need to eat this. I don't need to be overweight. I will go exercise. I can do this because my mind is so strong that I have the willpower to do this. So I go, so I'm not sure if that's quite, you know, what I would say there, that your mind is so strong because it's showing otherwise. It's like what we talked about yesterday,
mm,
saying that you love yourself when your actions show that you don't.
mm. Dang, that's like a very powerful statement. And like, um, I don't think some people are just ready to hear that.
They're not.
And yeah, it's something else. Or I know this is a little off topic, but I just like it came back to my earlier when we were talking just like about that Iceman. There's this other like talking about like the power of your mind. Like there's this or and what your physical body can do. So do you know about like Mind Valley? Have you ever heard of that one there, Kurt? Mind Valley?
Mind
It's
Valley?
like an organization that has like a lot of people, like that Iceman, Bruce Lipton, he's been on it, just like a whole boatload. But of course it's a paid thing that you have to do. But I had watched one of his the Iceman's video, and one of the coolest techniques and tools that I saw that he used that made it so that he could push himself swimming under the Atlantic for, like a whole football field is, he did this breathing exercise. And it's like almost to the point where like you hyperventilate. So you're just like, and you like keep taking deep breaths. So like most of you, if you try to hold your breath right now, maybe you'll last a minute. But I guarantee if any of you try this, you'll be able to do it 2 or 3 times longer, and I can as well. So like right before you want to hold your breath, like 4 minutes beforehand, or even 2 minutes beforehand, like you just keep on taking these deep breaths, and it allows that oxygen to go throughout your body in your bloodstream, and um and I was like, gosh, I wish more people knew about this, because if I ever found myself like in a car accident going down into the lake, like these kind of techniques that we're talking about, it's like, the power of the mind and your body, it's like so interesting. But yeah, so then you just like you keep on taking those deep breaths, and you'll be able to like, withstand, quite a bit. And I look at all of this stuff, and it's like, these different tools that we're talking about, it's like they really can help people if they would only be willing to try the different things.
Well, it's not just that, but you said something earlier. It's like when you do these things, it's like riding a bike. You have to continue riding to get better and better at it. And so what I'm sure this is your experience too, but my experience is like everybody would love to have the breathing ability of a yogi, like that can hold their breath for 10 minutes,
Mm,
or slow their breathing down to where it's or their heart rate down to where it's almost imperceptible. Everybody would love to be able to do those things, but they only wanted to practice like, oh, well, let me do this for 5 minutes, and then I'm good, right? That's all I got to do is put 5 minutes in, and I can do it.
yeah.
It's like
Uh, uh, uh.
it's like yeah, that's
And you know what? Talking about heart rate, that I actually can do that. I can raise my heart rate like 20 to 30 beats per minute more in about a minute
oh really.
without, yeah, just by meditation.
I've practiced that a little to lower my heart rate, and I've been
Mm.
able to do that to where I can. I'd say maybe 10 beats per minute. I've gotten to where I can lower it, and just like with my pool, I practice.
Wow, 10 beats per minute.
Yeah, I've gotten it down for like if it's around 65 or 70, I can get it down around 55 to 60. And so
Okay.
when I'm in complete rest, I've gotten it down into the high 40s before. So, I don't know what that compares
Mm.
to other people. Because I'm not comparing myself, but I wanted to see what I could do with my body. And it's the same way with
Fine.
my breathing. I'll go out in the pool I'll probably do 5 or 6 sessions of this where I start off with holding my breath for 30 seconds, holding my breath for 45 seconds, a minute, a minute and a half. And I've gotten up over 2 minutes. But I know because it is like you said, the more you do it, the stronger you become at it. I know I could get myself up to 5 minutes at some point. Um,
Mm.
or I don't know what the world record is, and I don't plan on beating it, but I'm sure that the more you practice it, the more you could hold your breath, the longer you could hold your breath for and stuff. So, and
Mm.
it's just like lifting weights. The more you do it, the stronger you become at it.
Yeah, for sure. My resting heart rate is 50.
That's
And
great.
I can get it to like 80 or 90 pretty good. And like, I once I learned the strategy, it made sense even for like the movies where these people can fake the lie detector test. And it's like, okay, your heart rate raises, when you're lying or whatever. Or sometimes it's lowering. One of the best, I took this course in from this gosh, who are the people where you're about to commit suicide, and then they're the ones that talk you out of it.
Mm, I know who you're talking about. I don't know
Oh, okay.
the name.
Well, anyways, so he was telling you, he's like the best way, to learn how somebody's lying is like first you do, and this is why they do the pre-questions like, what's your name? What shirt are you wearing? So you evaluate how they respond, how their heart rate responds, how their physical movements, change. And then you have something to base your self on for real questions that are not as straightforward. And like I think about even like that, and it's like, I would love to try a lie detector test and then raise my heartbeat when I'm telling the truth, but just to make it look like, yada yada yada.
There's such a simple way to beat it. I've done that. I had a bet with a friend of mine who's a psychologist, and he used a person who gave lie detecting tests. I think he used them like once a month or something. And I said I could be his test, and he goes, "No, you couldn't." I go, "Yes, I can." And so he's like, "Well, come by. He's going to be, we set up a date when he was going to be there." And so I met him at his office. And so I sat down and I completely lied to this man and I passed. And the funny thing was, is this guy was so convinced that he could catch me. He does this little card trick, right? And to prove to me that I can't lie to him. It was that's what the whole thing
Mm,
was to prove that I couldn't lie to him. And I knew what he was doing with the card trick. And so I played along with his card trick. And then every answer to the questions he asked me, practically I lied except for my name, because that would have been too obvious. Um,
right.
but it was so easy to beat it. And I have a technique I'll tell you later, because I don't want to. I truly don't want people, because I don't want them using that kind of power for bad reasons. So to get out of that
Mm,
they did. But yeah, it's much easier than even changing your heart rate up. It's just it's and it comes to the mind again. So, but it was fun, and I got a dinner out of that, by the way. So
anything for a free dinner, right?
exactly.
Uh,
I wanted to see
uh,
if I could do it, and I found it to be so ridiculously easy. And this is why lie detector tests aren't admissible in court, because they are. They're If you know how to beat them, you could lie about anything and they would never know. It's the same reason why we don't use hypnosis, because people who understand how hypnosis works could very easily lie and say the things that people want to hear in order to get away with something. So because
mm.
those aren't exact sciences. So, but
Like you said, even like with that one loophole, like the brain can find a
right.
way.
Exactly.
There's always a back door somewhere.
There always is. Yes, that's very true. Well, Alex, listen, I've had a great time with you. I really love the topics that we covered today, and I hope people listen to this and have an open mind about things, and challenge themselves and see
Mm,
what they've learned, and continue to learn. And I think what you'll find is that there is this awakening that's going on. And I think that this is part of it, where people are becoming aware that everything isn't about the physical. And the more people who become aware of that, the sooner we can turn this nonsense around, where we can make the world a better place, and not be caught up in these traps that we seem to be in, that these games and these programs, as we talked about yesterday, that are fed
right.
to us to buy into and to believe. So I really appreciate having you on here. I appreciate having these kind of conversations with you, because I think they not only can they help people, I think that these kind of conversations can help the world as a whole, once more and
Mm.
more people become aware of it. So great work.
I think the world's waking up. It really is,
Yep.
my friend.
I,
And
I, I agree.
yeah, I'm glad it is. And it was an honor, talking about the subjects we did yesterday, or last episode, and this episode as well. So,
Well, thank you. And thank you again. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being on. And, you're an amazing young man, and I see more amazing things coming from you in the future. So, I've had some really, really amazing guests, and I always tell them, And I'm going to tell you this: when you become famous, don't forget about me. Get back on my show.
I can't ever forget a name like Powers. So
Well, thank you very much. Okay, folks. So listen, I hope you enjoyed this show as much as Alex and I enjoyed having and doing it. So in our conversation. So, but until next time, make sure you take care, you be safe, and for right now, even if you don't want to, wear your mask. Bye.